Fun fact, Bill Gates once said that software is more important than hardware. Do you know why? It's because the average person cares more about the experience the hardware provides over the specs inside the machine. This is the reason Nintendo's able to release consoles weaker than Microsoft and Sony's offering. People love Nintendo for their unique experiences rather than having the latest graphics. This leads me back to the conversation Chat and I had the other day over at twitch.tv/TheBlackHokage. I asked the chat, what games do you believe define this current generation? Because here we are, 3 years into the current gen, and it seems that everyone universally agreed the only title that we've seen manage to do this is Elden Ring.
I didn't think of that.
Sure, you've got solid games such as Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, God of War Ragnarok, and Horizon Forbidden West, but those all felt a little too familiar. They're good games, but they're also remnants of the last generation. 3 years in, and you would hope there'd be more games pushing the envelope. When I say Dreamcast, you think of Sonic Adventure, Shenmue, and Power Stone. When I say PS2, you think of SOCOM, NBA Street Volume 2, and the OG God of War. And when I say GameCube, you think of Luigi's Mansion, Smash Melee, and Metroid Prime. You get the point. So now I present to you the question, when I say Game Boy, what do you think? Some of you might say Pokemon Red and Blue, Wario Land 2, Zelda Link's Awakening, but if you're old like me, then there's one more game you'd probably add to that list, and that'd be Tetris. I know it's a simple game, but Tetris is one of the most important games in video game history. Tetris played a major role in the success of the original Game Boy, and without the original Game Boy, we wouldn't have gotten all these other predecessors such as the DS and the 3DS and the Game Boy Advance SP or even the Nintendo Switch. The Game Boy was Nintendo's first attempt at the handheld market, and they knew they needed to have amazing software to push this new hardware. Thus, Tetris was bundled with the Game Boy in North America and European markets. Yeah, Wii Sports isn't the first time Nintendo did a bundled game with a new platform. It started with Tetris and the Game Boy. But how many of you actually know the story of Tetris? I'm sure many of you know this game helped Nintendo further stamp itself in video game history, but I doubt many of you know the hell that they had to go through to get the rights to distribute Tetris to the world.
Wait, what happened?
The story of Tetris is an interesting one. The game was developed by a man named Alexis during the decline of the USSR, and seeing as the game was developed while Russia was still under a communist state, the government had control on what they could and could not do with the game. This made it difficult for the American businessman Henk Rogers to cut a licensing deal with him, Alexis, and Nintendo. Now, that's just a simplified way of explaining the situation. If you want a deeper dive into this interesting piece of history, I'd recommend checking out the film Tetris, which is streaming right now on Apple TV or, other sites. As someone who's deep into gaming culture, I was aware of this story, but on a much more elementary level. Upon completing Tetris the film, it gave me a whole new appreciation for the game, its creator, and democracy. The first thing that surprised me about the film was its tone. I hadn't watched any trailers. I had heard about this film by word of mouth. I assumed that I was going to be getting myself into an ultra serious documentary detailing the struggles for a man to share his art with the world that would culminate in Ronald Reagan flooding our forest with cocaine bears as he shouted over a megaphone.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
That last line was just an excuse to promote my previous video about the movie Cocaine Bear. If you haven't seen it, there will be a link in the description box below to my previous video about Cocaine Bear. Anyways, the tone of Tetris is almost satirical to the point where I nearly question if I put on the correct movie. The film mainly follows American businessman Henk Rogers in his pursuit for Tetris' licensing rights. Hank is this charming, upbeat, and silly guy determined to bring Tetris to the world after getting a chance to play it at a convention and falling in love with it. I'm just curious to know if that's accurate to Hank's personality or if it was something done to spice up the film. Either way, once I settled in and accepted the movie for what it was, I found that it's a film that strikes a nice balance between being entertaining and historically accurate. I felt the way that they handled the USSR aspect of the film to be tasteful. Tetris, it didn't feel like American propaganda trying to prop up capitalism, but instead a human story about overcoming the odds. I'm a huge history buff, so I love biopics that dive deep into untold aspects of history. I really like the sets and the shots used when Hank was inside of Russia. They didn't depict the USSR solely as this desolate place. They had people walking around, but I also loved how every shot had a dark and gritty color grading to it. The color grading did a great job of setting the tone. Yeah, this is a movie about a video game, but even situations as simple as a business transaction with a foreigner can become complicated. And despite the complications, this film had some genuinely funny moments that also humanize everyone involved, further reminding you that you have more in common with people than you might think if you just give one another a shot. This movie also does a great job of reminding you how scummy some people can be when it comes to business. Once again, I'm not sure how accurate this movie is to the real world situation, but the things Henk had to endure to ensure those licensing rights are insane. And you would think that the worst of it came from Russia, but really it came from his UK business partners. One of my favorite things about this film is it does a great job of showcasing how capitalism and communism can be evil. The movie played no favorites. Instead, it opted to showcase how each system influenced one another to do evil things, all while one man is trying to share a video game with the world. Once again, this film did a solid job of finding that balance between being educational and entertaining while not becoming preachy. I'm also genuinely shocked how well produced this film is. This is an Apple TV Plus exclusive, but it could have easily have gone to theaters. This is my first Apple TV exclusive that I've ever watched, so I'm ignorant to other dope content that might have been on the platform, so feel free to recommend me some Apple TV exclusives if you've watched them in the comments below. And while you do that, I'll take the time to let you know that I recommend checking out the Tetris film. It's an inspirational story about never giving up, and it has a happy ending. Because of one game, this man Alexis is capable of feeding his family probably forever if they play their cards right. They still make new Tetris games to this date. It's on every platform from PC to console to mobile. Seriously, who doesn't love Tetris? Someone with a Charlie Brown blockhead, obviously. See what I did there? Tetris, Charlie Brown, blockhead. Come on, I'm just saying. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the part of the video where I am going to discuss spoilers. So if you have not seen Tetris, please pause this video, leave a like, and then come back to this part of the video when you've actually seen the movie. Okay, now that you guys have a second to, you got a second to get away, spoilers. Listen. So I did some research and I found out some of the stuff in the film is hammed up to sell the drama. An example being the KGB officer who posed as Henk's translator. Yeah, she wasn't real. I want to know what happened to the old man who sold the rights to Tetris to Henk. The one who was cutting a deal with everyone, you know, the one that said that he wanted to do what he felt was right for his country, but ultimately he chose to go with Henk in the end instead of giving in to the fat cat UK dude. He was one of the heroes of the movie and there's no mention of him at the end. Did the feds do something to him? Did they feel like he betrayed the state? Does he become rich eventually? Like, does he get to live out the rest of his life like happy and rich? What happened to the poor old, like the old dude? Come on, he seemed like a reasonable guy. Maybe I'm just digging too deep here, but I just want to know what happened. I just want to know. If anybody has any answers, let me know. But you probably won't. Y'all don't feel me. I'm just saying.